Around 500,000 people have fled Hong Kong since China started its crackdown on democracy and freedom of speech in the territory. More than a third of those who left are now in the UK. So how has life changed for them, and are they ever planning to return? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. For decades, Hong Kong had been a magnet for global business. But Beijing's crackdown on its special political status and anyone who openly dissented has caused thousands to leave. So, how are they now adapting to life in the West?
Armed with umbrellas, these pro-democracy protesters made headlines around the world 10 years ago. But in the David and Goliath-esque battle, mighty China prevailed, and many of the vanquished fled westward. Britain has a long history of colonial rule in the region. After years of disagreement, in 1898, China leased Hong Kong to Britain for 99 years. In 1997, Hong Kong was handed back under the so-called One Nation, Two Systems framework. Protests began in 2014, and in 2020, China introduced the freedom-crushing National Security Law. The following year, the UK introduced a visa scheme for the people of Hong Kong. So far, nearly 200,000 have successfully applied. Unlike other schemes, though, applicants have to prove they have 6 months of savings and are not entitled to universal credit or housing benefit. That means the majority are wealthier than many other migrants. And for most, moving to the UK means taking a pay cut and often having to change career paths. The most significant barriers to work are confidence in speaking English and qualifications being recognised in the UK. Some, like protest leader Nathan Law, were granted political asylum.
I will definitely be vocal and active in the international level and deliver Hong Kong people's demands and their voices, given that they are unlikely to do so on the ground.
Those who stayed are facing lengthy jail terms, like Jimmy Lai, founder of the pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily. He's charged with sedition and collusion and will spend the rest of his life behind bars if found guilty. For this reason, activists who've left are unlikely to go back. China's political candidates now run Hong Kong, and dissident voices are silenced. Perhaps a freer life in a different country is the best pro-democracy HongKongers can hope for now.
Well, let's meet our guests. In the studio is Claire Pearsall. She's a former special advisor at the UK's Home Office and is currently Chief of Staff for the Conservative Member of Parliament, Caroline Noakes. Jason Chao is Director of HongKongers in Britain. It's a community of volunteers and activists addressing the issue of people from the territory considering moving to the UK or indeed newly settled in the United Kingdom. And Carmen Lau is the International Advocacy and Programme Associate at the Hong Kong Democracy Council. She's also a former elected district councillor of Hong Kong. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Carmen, I'll come to you first. How have you settled into life in the UK? What's it been like?
I cannot complain because the UK government has definitely provided Hong Kongers a safe haven after the 2019 protests. And we are now having a vibrant civil society for Hong Kongers in the UK. So it's been well.
You're enjoying your life here?
Yes, at least we can talk freely and we have a safe home, which rather safe, feeling rather safe.
This is a very safe space to have a conversation. Jason, you're very welcome as well. You've been in the United Kingdom a bit longer than Carmen. How have you settled into life here?
Well, we're HongKongers are very grateful for the BNO visa scheme, and it is just so great to be able to exercise the right to free speech, and for the holders of the BNO status, they will have the right to vote in the January elections. So they're going to have the right to enjoy genuine universal suffrage. So this is one of the things that Hong Kongers in Britain treasure when they live in the UK.
So this is the British National Overseas Visa Scheme, Claire. Just give us a run through what the thinking was behind that. I mean, it's been a success really for the UK government, hasn't it?
It certainly has, and ever since the UK handed back authority in 1997 for Hong Kong, we felt it was imperative that those individuals who are overseas, a British national overseas, should have the right to come and live safely within the United Kingdom on a visa system. And it's one of those systems that has gradually opened up and more people have been involved in it. And when you look at the impact that it has, just listening to two very short stories at the moment, it is quite amazing to think that free speech is one of those things that we take for granted in the United Kingdom, which people are enjoying the fact that they have it by simply coming here. So it is only right that we opened up our doors and opened up our hearts over to the HongKongers to come and live here in the United Kingdom.
But isn't that extraordinary, Claire, that within a couple of minutes of the conversation, the first thing we've hit on is free speech?
It is, and I think that that is the one thing that people in this country take for granted. You have the right to protest, you have the right to criticise a government without fear of being arrested or called a terrorist, which I know that some Hong Kongers actually are accused of. So it is fundamental, I think, to the rights of people to have that freedom of speech and have that freedom to be able to live their lives as they choose. And it is not always allowed in other countries. So I think it opens our eyes to what is going on around the world. And as past, not owners, but as past governorship of Hong Kong, I think it's right that we allow people to come and enjoy that.
Carmen, I want to talk about the issue of security for you in the UK. Do you feel safe?
Apparently, I feel much safer than in the UK than in Hong Kong, because I was a politician in Hong Kong and then now I'm an activist. And at least in the UK, there are some sort of protection to free speech and right to protesters. And many of the activists in the UK are now actually wanted by the Hong Kong government. For example, myself. And I think...
What are you wanted for? Just explain that to our viewers.
I was wanted during the Legislative Council elections in Hong Kong in December 2021 because I asked Hong Kongers to boycott the elections, and I was wanted by one of the law under the bigotry, for the elections. And many of my colleagues are now actually wanted under the national security law as well. But then in the UK so far, I would see it is a safe place for us to do our advocacy. And of course, the UK government and many of the politicians are really supportive to our cause. And yeah, I think relatively it's safe, but of course there are assaults and also harassment happens occasionally. And I think is an alarm for the UK government to provide extra security to Hong Kong community as well.
Let's bring in Jason again. Jason, have you any concerns about security in the UK? Are you worried that you might be followed, for example, by Chinese state surveillance?
Well, on a personal level, so although we are in the UK, my colleagues and I myself are often look around to see if we are being followed. So there's kind of a paranoia that we cannot get out of. But let's take it to a greater context. We know from various reports that China might have set up overseas police stations around the world, including in the UK. So there's kind of a general concern about transnational repression being perpetrated by the Chinese Communist Party. And we also received reports that Hong Kongers who took part in Hong Kong-related rallies in the UK would experience their homes in Hong Kong being visited by the Hong Kong authorities.
So you go to a protest, say, in London, and then your family members in Hong Kong will have a knock on the door.
Well, that's the reports that we received, and it is a phenomenon that at the Hong Kong-related rallies, there might be suspicious people taking photos, And also at some of the activities that we organize, we noticed that some suspicious people who tried to, let's say, come to our activities. Of course, we denied their registrations, but still we can observe that there could be intelligence gathering activities going on, and these people might have connection with the Chinese Communist Party.
Claire, does this worry you that China has overseas police stations in the UK? Did you know this?
I think I've been aware of activity around that. And in fact, Lord Cameron, who is now the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, said in December that he is calling on Beijing to repeal the national security law, especially when it comes to people who are British citizens. And I think it is quite concerning that individuals can take part in perfectly legal protests in this country, but unfortunately friends or family members connected to them back in Hong Kong will fall under that law. So I think that a lot more work needs to be undertaken. I believe there were 5 individuals in the United Kingdom who were deemed ready for extradition by the Chinese, which the government said that isn't happening. This is an atrocious abuse of power. So we know that there is that activity, and I think that Lord Cameron is now very aware of it, and it is always very difficult with diplomatic relations to say you cannot do something, you must change your laws. You have to work through the process, which unfortunately just isn't quick. But the United Kingdom is definitely much more aware of it.
From a purely British economic perspective, how much of a thorn is this Hong Kong issue for the UK, knowing that Britain needs trade deals? China is a huge, huge market and trading partner. And at the same time, we're hearing very legitimate concerns here.
I think that we have become too concerned with our trading agreements with China, and I think that we put too much emphasis on it. When you look at some of the human rights abuses that take place, I think the United Kingdom does actually need to start to look elsewhere for trading partners. You cannot allow that kind of behaviour to go on around the world. It's not just here. And we've become too reliant upon Chinese technology and Chinese security systems. And I think that now we need to start to cool that relationship, start to look at what is going on and what the risk is to UK security, national security, because that has to take a precedent.
Carmen, how do you feel knowing that there are Chinese state operatives in the UK who would take pictures of you or follow you around or put you under surveillance?
Well, we've been taking extra cautious on this because back in Hong Kong, we were often shadowed and surveilled by self-claimed journalists or like Chinese National Security Police as well. And of course, many of the Hong Kongers here couldn't imagine this would happen in the UK soil as well. And therefore, we often communicate with, for example, local authorities or Hong Kong grassroots community organizations. We are putting extra cares when we're organizing events and activities. And for now, we hope the police could recognize these kind of transnational repression activities which are ongoing by the Chinese people and to provide extra cares to Hong Kongers here.
So how are they finding out where you're going? I mean, are you worried about your mobile phone being hacked into or emails?
Yeah, these kind of personal security, we have been like putting extra care for that and organizing workshops for Hong Kong, not only activists, but Hong Kong citizens here in the UK. And of course, on physical assault or harassment or shadowing, we are trying to like raise the awareness inside the community and also outside the community for, outreaching for help and for, assistance.
Jason, looking forward, I mean, do you look forward to the day when you don't have to look over your shoulder in the United Kingdom for fear of being followed or people taking your photograph?
Well, so it's a matter of fact that just sharing a personal experience. Last week, there were attempts to hack into my work email account, Well, so there's no signs that those attempts were successful. Those attempts were not successful, but there were repeated attempts to hack into my work email account and my social media accounts. So, so the security threats might not just be physical, but it might also be digital. So, so it is clear that we are being monitored, or at least there are attempts to monitor our activities, even though we are working lawfully in the UK.
How does it make you feel then, knowing that you've got to be so safe? And I mean, we all try to change passwords and keep ahead of things, but for you, this is next level. Yes,
I think it is. This is time for the world, including the UK, of course, to speak up. While on transnational repression, more should be done to tackle transnational repression.
Claire, go back to 1997 and the handover and everything that followed. We were told one country, two systems. Hasn't worked out like that.
No, it hasn't. And I think that it was a little bit of sort of almost wishful thinking. I think it started well, but the problem is that Hong Kong wanted to bring in its own security laws, but they were proving to be so unpopular that it was deemed that it must stay with Beijing and be governed from there. And I think there's an awful lot that needs to be dealt with. You have Hong Kong citizens who remain within Hong Kong, who have the risk of being tried in a court in Beijing. And that shouldn't be right for a state like Hong Kong, which is its own country, even though it now comes under the Chinese, for it to be governed in every way, shape or form. And I think that that was something that is potentially a failing of the handover agreement, but it was all very sort of last minute. And unfortunately, once everything was signed, those laws that were deeming that there would be two systems were not revealed until the very, very last minute. So there was an awful lot of hiding of what the detail was going to be. We were told one thing, it's proved to be another. And all of the ongoing sort of since 1997, it is a very secretive way of dealing with laws surrounding those individuals. And I think the most frightening one is that somebody could be convicted of terrorism for a simple act of a bit of vandalism on a public transport, so a bus or a train or a tram. That comes under terrorism. Now, what we can do about it is extremely limited. We can exert diplomatic pressure, and we have been doing so. But I think that it's going to take a little bit more action. And listening to these stories, it is horrendous. And I wonder quite how much the police are aware in the United Kingdom of what this activity means. And just looking around, it seems that it isn't. So we need to make that more known, make the police more aware, but also government officials, because I'm not sure that they really understand the lengths that the Chinese government will go to clamp down on people from Hong Kong.
Well, just on that point, Carmen, you travelled to the United States. Yeah. Share with our viewers what happened to you.
I travelled to the United States last November for the APEC summit. My organisation, we organised along with Tibetans and Uyghurs some protests because Xi Jinping was visiting San Francisco for the APEC summit. And during the protests, many of the protesters, including HongKongers, Uyghurs and Tibetans, were physically assaulted. And I myself was being pushed and also hair pulled around as well by the Chinese. And there were...
So the Chinese were in the protest group?
Yeah, there were two groups of protesters. One were the Chinese supporters, and the other one were like cross movements by HongKongers, organized by HongKongers, Tibetans, and Uyghurs. The arrangement by the police was a bit problematic. We had to go through the Chinese supporters in order to get into the protest zone. And during that, during that walk, short distance walk among the Chinese protesters, we were just being harassed and also assaulted. And many of our protesters' phones were taken away and cameras were damaged. And there were Chinese national security police on the scene. We speculated.
In the United States, in California, yes. On the ground looking for
yes.
you and causing problems.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Jason, are you surprised to hear this? I mean, this obviously is going to follow HongKongers everywhere they go.
Well, it is more and more concerning that we keep hearing these stories while happening, and these stories are quite consistent that you have individuals who might be originally from China, and they work or study in the US and in the UK, and at the same time, they collaborate with the Chinese authorities to to do things that are not nice to Hong Kongers. Well, let me give you some more evidence. So Hong Kongers in Britain conducted a security survey, and 63% of the respondents feared that the greatest source of security threats to them are the pro-Beijing organizations and individuals in the UK. So only 24% of the respondents thought that, well, the security concerns would stem from the Chinese government itself directly. So I think there's it seems that so either these organizational individuals who are based in the UK or US work with
They're working on behalf of the Chinese government,
of the Chinese government, and I think, well, we know that there's legislation perhaps being proposed in the United States to regulate these activities, and we are also aware of the National Security Act passed in the UK last year. I think there's the whole UK society should be made more aware of this piece of legislation, because so there are things in the UK's latest national security law which could protect Hong Kongers from transnational
and make life safer for you. Claire, I just want to look at a statistic here. Hong Kong immigrants, they're wealthier than the average immigrants who arrive in the UK. So let's just take a look at how much wealth they could bring to the UK. Home Office estimates suggest a net benefit for the United Kingdom of between $3 and $3.7 billion over 5 years. I mean, this is an economic win for Britain, isn't it? Letting Hong Kongers in and having very well educated, mostly young people with a lot of cash.
Yeah, it is mostly young people or those with young families who wish to educate their children within the United Kingdom. And that has to be welcomed. The economic benefits of the United Kingdom are quite evident. The communities themselves settle well, they integrate well, and don't have any problems with things like housing and access to services. It sort of works nicely. And I do remember a bit of an argument back in 2018 when I was in the Home Office looking at the B&O visa system, because there were some people opposed to it because they said that we would have everybody coming over. And unfortunately, in the United Kingdom, immigration is one of those issues where you start to look at sheer numbers of people and don't look at the benefits that they bring. But I think once people understood who was coming over, and the fact is that Hong Kong was under British rule for some time, until 1997, that we had an absolute right to make that happen. And as you've just said, those figures speak for themselves. The economic benefit to the United Kingdom for education purposes, university places, and especially within science and technology sectors is enormous. And I don't see an issue with it whatsoever. What the United Kingdom does need to do is tighten up the national security laws, as we've just heard. And I think perhaps some lobby of the United Kingdom government and ministers really does need to happen to make people more aware of it.
Carmen, I want to ask you, 184,000 mostly young Hong Kongers coming to the United Kingdom. What does that mean for Hong Kong for the future? Because the brains of your country are moving overseas.
Well, as you can see in Hong Kong now, the economic and financial sectors are ongoing, being a recess, and the price of the housing are drastically dropping in Hong Kong, and you can see that like the Hong Kong society hasn't been vibrant after all, after the national security law. And as you said, young professionals and families are exiled, and relocated in the UK, and I wouldn't be optimistic about the Hong Kong society in at least a short future, because of course monies and finance are being moved away. Big crops are relocating their Asia headquarters from Hong Kong to, for example, like Singapore or Shanghai maybe. And yeah, I wouldn't be really, I would be pessimistic about the Hong Kong.
Do you miss Hong Kong?
Yeah, definitely, about, of course, all the cultures and peoples, and of course, friends and family who are now in jail. I really miss them. Yeah.
Jason, do you miss home? What makes you feel welcome in the UK, apart from freedom of speech? I mean, it must have been a huge wrench to leave Hong Kong.
Well, I think it is, so as Carmen has said, it is really sad to see how Hong Kong has fallen into this state. It is definitely sad to see, but we also hope that one day there will be chance for Hong Kongers to safely travel back to Hong Kong.
So you can't safely travel now, can you? You would probably get in trouble.
Well, many Hong Kongers in the UK now can't. Well, there are some serious security concerns because of how unpredictable that the Hong Kong authorities will apply the national security law in Hong Kong, and look into the future. I don't think authoritarian regimes are sustainable in the long run. So there will be some chance that Hong Kongers will have a chance to effectively regain that freedom and establish a kind of government that they want in Hong Kong one day. So it is important to keep the hopes up.
On that note, thank you, Jason, Claire and Carmen. Thank you all so much. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for Roundtable, TRT World. And if you like what you've seen, do hit that subscribe button. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.